Following the success of the first Friday the 13th movie, the sequel was rushed into production and released the following year. It was shot in Connecticut this time instead of New Jersey.
But I think Friday the 13th is a New Jersey kind of show. I think they ought to stick with their roots. Jason is a Jersey guy, you know what I mean?
It's a true sequel in a sense that it feels just like a continuation of the first movie, for better and for worse. The same sort of things happen all over again. The tone just feels like the first movie. It moves along at a very slow pace.
What's green and red and moves 100 miles an hour? What? A frog in a blender.
The production quality is a little better. Supposedly the budget was a little over $1 million, whereas the first one was just over $500,000. The plot is nothing out of the ordinary. A new group of people arrive at the campground and are all killed off. The characters are all new because there's nobody left alive from the first movie, except Alice, and guess what? She gets killed before the opening credits, in her own home. Of course, I'm sure everybody knows by now, Jason Voorhees is the killer in this movie, and from now on. It makes sense to me that Jason would kill her because she decapitated his mother. What doesn't make sense is why he goes around killing everybody else too, but who cares? Maybe it's just a territorial thing. The campground is like his home. Anyway, with Alice out of the way, there's no more recurring characters. Well, scratch that. There's the "you're doomed" guy, but even he meets his demise. It should be said that unlike the Halloween series, there's no Laurie Strode or Dr. Loomis equivalent, no recurring characters to get to know or relate to. I think that's something that's missing that could have made these films better. What I do like is the backstory of Jason, how he drowned in the lake. It gives it more of an urban legend kind of feel. The body was never found, so nobody even knows if Jason was real or not. The campfire scene alone sets the perfect mood.
Some folks claim they've even seen him. Right in this area. Thirsty for young blood.
There's an early example of the prankster stereotype, the guy who puts on a mask and scares people before the real killer shows up. It's a big cliche, soon to be repeated in the sequels and countless other films. Of course, there's also the car won't start cliche. There's the girl with the ass that gets its own close-up. Then the pervert guy comes out of the woods and slingshots her. And he's not even the slightest bit coy about it. He stares her right down with that sneaky grin. Number 8 in my top 13 moments. Later on, she's swimming naked and he takes her clothes away.
Looking for something?
Fucking pervert. One big cliche that gets used way too often here is the infamous POV shot. Half the movie is just people running from the camera. Then there's the dead dog. Don't kill the dog. Nobody likes that. Kill the people instead.
One of the main rules of horror films is that you can kill as many people as you want to, but you never kill a pet. People get upset.
By the way, to everyone who says that Jason never runs, look at that. What do you call that? A fast walk? After the hour mark, the movie picks up. Like always, it's the final chase scene that makes it worthwhile, although it's nowhere near as good as the finale from the first movie. And it's a little, what's the word? Slapsticky. Yeah, I mean, anytime the scary villain is kicked in the balls, what can you say? Some of the chase takes place in Jason's makeshift home, which he built in the woods using parts of different things. It's a nice addition, and it should be said that the way Jason is portrayed in this movie is more like a realistic hermit instead of a supernatural killing machine. The fact that he keeps his mother's head on display is an effectively eerie touch. I wonder how Jason got his mother's sweater but not her body. Maybe they thought it would be too much like Psycho, or she had more than one of the same sweater. I've always wondered what the series would have been like if Mrs. Voorhees came back more often in some shape or form.
Jason, Mother is talking to you!
From here on out, the whole focus became on Jason. Of course, as you can see, Jason's wearing a sack over his head instead of the famous hockey mask, which doesn't happen till part 3. So we're 2 movies in, and it's still not the Jason that everybody knows. This makes the series a little more interesting to me than the Halloween series because everything that you want to see gets introduced gradually, so it savors the experience when watching all these movies in order. There's been a lot of confusion on what exactly happened with Jason. It seems most people are under the impression that Jason never actually drowned in the lake and that he's been living in the woods ever since. This leaves you wondering how Mrs. Voorhees never found him all those years since. My assumption had always been that Jason first rose from the lake after the death of his mother, and he's been a zombie all this time. The only monkey wrench in that idea is that the Jason we saw at the end of Part 1 was a young boy. In Part 2, he's an adult, which in itself is debatable. He looks small to me. In further sequels, they always seem to beef him up more, so I always assumed he was still growing. The one moment where I can concede he's probably an adult in Part 2 is at the end you see his face. He looks much different, especially having gone from bald to having long hair. Then you raise the question, if he's a zombie, do zombies age? If they do, his growth rate between Parts 1 and 2 would make enough sense to me because they take place 5 years apart. That's enough time for a youth to grow drastically. But then everything gets confusing because he drowned back in the 50s. The first Friday the 13th takes place in the present time. He would have rotted away by then. So the only thing to explain him being a young boy in Part 1 is that it was just a hallucination or a dream. But I don't like that. That's my favorite moment. I want it to be real. But then again, none of it's real because it's just a movie, so fuck it.